Are the Tennessee Volunteers the best team in the SEC? Before we dive into that question, we're going to take a look at what happened this weekend, a monumental win over the Alabama Crimson Tide. We're going to take a look at why Tennessee needs to be feared this year. There are a couple of things that are going into that. And while there are other teams that are in the running for that conversation, including Alabama still, this is a Tennessee team that needs to be taken seriously. The 52-49 win, great win for Tennessee, a win that is, ending a 15-game losing streak to Alabama. Hendon Hooker was phenomenal, 385 yards and 5 touchdowns passing. At times it looked like nothing phased him, and then at other times it looked like that everything was going wrong. So it was a roller coaster of emotions, and it was one that it was maybe frustrating to watch at times, but then also you come away with a huge win. And his top target, Jalin Hyatt, this was huge because Cedric Tillman was out. And this is a player who has had big games against the best teams that Tennessee has faced the last year and a half. So losing him was going to be a big blow. But Jalin Hyatt stepped up. 6 catches for 207 yards, good for 34.5 yards per catch, and 5 touchdowns. Now, one thing that's funny about that is that he was 2 touchdowns shy of the NCAA record for touchdowns in a single game, which is just insane. But a huge game for Jalin Hyatt, a huge game for Tennessee. And I think the other thing to look at with Tennessee is Josh Heupel. As I mentioned in my preview, Josh Heupel has not had a good record in big games. He has typically struggled to win those games. Maybe not struggled in the games, like he's been able to put up points and whatnot. However, he has not been able to win them. And that is something that I was looking at going into this game. Can they win this game against Alabama, or is this going to be another one where they play really well? They just come up a little bit short. And honestly, when Will Reichard pushed that kick right, I thought that was, another game that Josh Heupel was going to lose, another big game that he just comes up short. But obviously it sails wide right. And then Hendon Hooker steps up and comes in clutch in a big way, gets his team in field goal range. And then, you know what? It doesn't have to be pretty. We get a field goal in and it goes through. It's good. Tennessee wins the game. That's a huge win for them. It's very exciting. College football has been phenomenal this year. There's been so many entertaining games. At the same time, even TCU and Oklahoma State went to overtime. That was an entertaining game. Arkansas and BYU at the same time, very entertaining game. There's so many games that have been really fun to watch, whether that's high scoring, back and forth games, you name it. This has been a great year for college football. And this feels like a year in which Tennessee might be different and different in a better way. When you look at what they've done so far, this is a team that's been really good, really explosive on offense. We're going to talk about the schedule in just a sec, but we'll look at what they do really well right now. So, one of the things that I mentioned coming into this game was my concerns about what is Tennessee's schedule going to do for them against Alabama? You look at the 7-point win over a Pitt team that doesn't look very good. They beat Ball State and they beat Akron by a lot. Nothing really to take out of that. The Florida game, they win by 5. Florida might be a better team at the end of the year, but right now we're really not sure. And then they thumped LSU. So it's been a good team, a team that's been able to put up points. We just didn't know how that was going to go against Alabama. Now Alabama's defense isn't maybe as good as we've once seen it, but this is still a talented team, and Tennessee had no problem shredding them apart. So you're looking at what Tennessee has done well. Offense is what they've done really well, and that's expected with a Josh Heupel team. Josh Heupel is someone who is, I think, to me, a very creative and very talented offensive mind. I think that he is very good at scheming his guys open, even in this system, which at times is just attacking half of the field. Now, one thing that they like to do is they typically like to attack the sidelines. Today, they went all over the field. They were going down the middle, they were going to the sidelines, you name it, they were doing it. And that was something I think was a big difference for this team. Now, the rushing attack was okay too, but it really was the passing attack that was attacking all different areas of the field. And then obviously, Jalin Hyatt having a huge game was a big part of that as well. Now, The one thing that they obviously are struggling with is defense. Giving up 49 points to an Alabama team is very good. Bryce Young's very good. Jahmyr Gibbs is very good. And this team is very talented, but that's something that's going to maybe bite them in a big game later. And there's still plenty of big games that they have to play. And we're going to take a look at those big games and what is going to happen potentially in those games. When you look at the remaining schedule for Tennessee Martin is the next game. Don't foresee any problems or many problems with that. If anything, maybe they have, a letdown game, but not one in which they lose. Like maybe it's just a closer than people anticipate, but that's what happens sometimes when you have a big win. But it's Tennessee Martin. So Tennessee shouldn't have any problems winning that game. The next game to me is going to be the toughest game. And I say that even with Georgia coming up afterwards. The reason why Kentucky is tougher to me is because you have to deal with not looking past Kentucky. Not that Tennessee would, but Kentucky is maybe to some people not as good of a team as we anticipated because they just lost to South Carolina. That might be some recency bias that goes against them. But Tennessee knows the importance of beating them because this is an SEC East team that they have to beat if they want to win the East. And obviously, they do have to get past Georgia, but Kentucky is a team that can give them troubles. They give them troubles in the past. Will Levis is back, and we'll see what happens with his development too, because he is still in the first round of many mock drafts that we're seeing. But it's a game right before the Georgia game that is a potential, not trap game, but it's one in which Tennessee needs to put all of their attention. You can't look past that team because then you go into the next week. Obviously, Georgia is going to be a tough matchup. It's going to be a tough game to win. Georgia is, to me, I think you have to. My argument would be that Georgia is the best team in the SEC after this week, even with Tennessee's win over Alabama. I think Alabama has some flaws. We saw the penalties really kill Alabama this week. That's going to be hard. Once they get past, if they're able to beat Kentucky and Georgia, I wish I could say that they can relax. But Missouri and South Carolina, and shoot, even Vanderbilt's showing flashes at times, those aren't easy games either. Now, they're easier than Kentucky and Georgia, but if they make it undefeated through the next three games, I think the last three games are really going to test how great of a team they can be because those again are all SEC East teams. And if they lose those games, that puts Georgia probably back into the SEC championship. So the next 3 weeks are really going to be huge for Tennessee. And I think it comes down to Josh Heupel must find a way to get his defense better because the offense is really good at shredding teams. They're really talented. They're really explosive. We saw even without their top player, Jalin Hyatt stepped up. We've seen guys like Brew McCoy. There's so many other players in this offense that can step up. It just comes down to what's going to happen if there's that one game in which the offense isn't doing what it can, because we're seeing Kentucky's offense can put up points, maybe not as fast as Tennessee's, but if their defense, Kentucky's defense is much better than Tennessee's defense. If Kentucky's defense is giving them a hard time, I think that Tennessee could be in trouble. Georgia is scoring points somehow this year. Stetson Bennett has looked pretty good for the most part. And they have so many playmakers like Brock Bowers. Darnell Washington just had an incredible play this weekend. Those are teams that can put up points. So it's going to come down to if the offense struggles, can the defense pick them up? Because if they can, then Tennessee has that well-rounded team that can be the best team in the SEC. Right now, they're in a great position. They just won a big game. They have all the confidence in the world. And if they get through the next 2 weeks with 2 wins, that Georgia game is going to be huge. One in which I think many are going to pick Georgia to win, but I wouldn't count Tennessee out because the confidence they'll have coming into that game is going to help them a lot. So maybe not the best team in the SEC, but they are certainly pushing it more than people expected this year.